This is Veronica, a woman believed to be God-fearing, a loving, oh yes, she is. But what happened when loneliness and temptation forces her to make a tragedy and heart-piercing decision? Sit back, relax, and enjoy this story. And before we begin, if you haven't subscribed, kindly do well to subscribe to this channel. Long ago, in a quiet town, there lived a woman called Sister Veronica. People called her sister not because she was a nun, but because she was always in church. She prayed, she sang, she helped people, and everyone thought she was a good woman. But inside her heart, Sister Veronica was very lonely. Her husband had died many years ago, leaving her alone. They had no children. For a long time, she cried every night on her bed. She missed her husband's voice. She missed the laughter they once shared. Her small house felt empty. The walls felt like they were closing in. Sometimes she cooked food and could not even eat it. Sometimes she washed her clothes and stared at them for hours. The silence in her home became her only friend. People in the town often said Veronica was strong. They said she was holy. They said she did not need a man. But they did not know her secret pain. They did not see how she wept when nobody was looking. They did not hear her whisper into the night, asking, "Lord, why did you leave me alone? I am still young. Must I die with this emptiness?" One Friday night, something happened that changed everything. Sister Veronica went out, not to church, but to a small bar near the roadside. She had never done that before. The bar was full of laughter, the smell of roasted meat, the sound of music, and the chatter of people. She only wanted to sit, drink a small bottle of malt, and watch life pass by. But in that bar sat a man called Mr. John. He was not very old, maybe in his late 40s. He wore a clean shirt, and his face carried the look of a man who had seen both joy and sorrow. When his eyes met Veronica's, something stirred in him. He smiled at her and said, "Good evening, madam. Are you alone?" Veronica wanted to look away, but her heart beat fast. Nobody had spoken to her like that for a long time. She nodded shyly and said, "Yes, I came just to sit." John chuckled and said, "Then I will sit with you. Nobody should be alone on a Friday night." And so they talked. At first, the words were small, about the weather, about the music, about the taste of the drinks. But soon their voices grew warm. They laughed together. For the first time in many years, Veronica felt like a woman again, not just a widow. John listened when she spoke. He asked about her life, her church, her late husband. He told her about his work, his travels, and his home. Hours passed like minutes. When Veronica stood to leave, John gently touched her arm and asked, "Can I see you again?" Her heart raced. She wanted to say no, but her lips betrayed her. She whispered yes. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. John kept his promise. He took her out, bought her gifts, made her laugh. He told her she was beautiful. He told her she was strong. And slowly, Veronica's heart opened. 2 months later, John said to her, "Veronica, I don't want to hide you anymore. Come and stay in my house. Be my wife fully." She hesitated at first, but loneliness had weakened her heart. She agreed. On the day she moved in, John brought his car to carry her things. A young man came out to help them. He was tall, with strong arms, and a face that was still fresh with youth. "Daniel," John called. "Come and help your mother." The boy walked closer and smiled politely at her. He was 19 years old, handsome in the way only young men are. He carried her bags inside with ease. When they entered the sitting room, John introduced them. He said, "My wife, this is Daniel. I found him years ago as an orphan. I raised him as my own son. Daniel, from today, this is your mother." Veronica forced a smile and said, "Nice to meet you, my son." Daniel bowed his head and replied, "Yes, Ma." Welcome. It was a normal moment, or so it seemed. But from that day forward, their lives would never be normal again. The house was big, but it was empty most of the time. Mr. John was a very busy man. He worked in another city, and he only came home once or twice every month. At first, Veronica thought she could manage it. She told herself that at least she had a husband again. At least she was not alone. But as the days passed, the old silence returned. The rooms were too quiet. The nights were too long. And this time, she was not completely alone. Somewhere in that house was Daniel, young, strong, living under the same roof. And though she did not yet know it, temptation was already knocking on her door. And so Sister Veronica entered her new life, but in the heart of her home lived a secret she could not control, a secret that would one day destroy her. Life in John's house was very different from what Sister Veronica was used to. Her old house had been small, with cracked walls and a rusty zinc roof. But John's house was large, painted white, with many rooms and tall windows. When Veronica first stepped inside, she felt both happy and afraid. Happy because she was now a wife again. Afraid because the house did not feel like hers yet. Daniel, the young man who had helped her carry her bags, moved about quietly. He was polite, respectful, and strong. Whenever John asked him to do something, he did it without complaint. On that first evening, John smiled proudly as he looked at both of them. "Now my home is complete," he said. "I have my wife and I have my son." Veronica tried to smile. Daniel bowed his head in respect, but the truth was that they were strangers to each other. The days passed quickly. At first, everything seemed normal. Veronica cooked meals in the kitchen, sometimes calling Daniel to bring water or light the stove. Daniel always answered softly, "Yes, Ma." When John was at home, he sat at the dining table with them. They ate together like a family. John would talk about his business deals, his travels, and his dreams. Veronica listened quietly. Daniel ate in silence. But John's work took him away often. Some weeks he stayed in the city for long business trips. On those days, the big house felt empty again. Veronica would sweep the rooms, dust the chairs, wash clothes, and still feel restless. She wanted company. She wanted laughter. She wanted to feel alive. Daniel was there, moving about quietly, but she reminded herself, "He is just a boy. My stepson, nothing more." Yet she found her eyes drifting toward him more often than she wanted. One Saturday afternoon, Daniel came home from the market with heavy bags. He had gone to buy food items for the week. His shirt clung to his chest with sweat, and his young muscles flexed as he lifted the load. Veronica watched from the kitchen door. Something stirred inside her, something she did not want to admit. She quickly turned away, whispering to herself, "No, Veronica, he is your son now. Don't let your mind wander." But loneliness has a way of making the heart weak. That night, Veronica lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling. She thought of John, her husband, busy in another city, sleeping in a hotel bed without her. She thought of the days she spent alone, the years of emptiness before she met him. And then, against her will, she thought of Daniel, the way his eyes looked serious but kind, the way his body carried strength. She shook her head and whispered, "God forbid. These are evil thoughts. I am his mother." But the thoughts did not leave. The next morning, she tried to push the feelings away. She cooked breakfast, yam porridge, and called Daniel. "Daniel." "Yes, Ma," he answered, walking in. "Come and eat," she said. He smiled faintly and sat down. They ate in silence. She watched how he ate carefully, how he wiped his hands, how he avoided her eyes. There was nothing wrong with the moment, but still, something inside her refused to be still. One evening, something happened that changed everything. Daniel was in the bathroom, taking his bath. Veronica, carrying a bucket of clothes, walked down the hallway. She did not know he was inside. She pushed the door open by mistake. "Ah!" she gasped. Daniel turned quickly, water dripping from his skin. He shouted, "Ma, please, I am inside!" Veronica's eyes widened. She quickly dropped the bucket and ran out, slamming the door behind her. Her heart beat like a drum. She leaned against the wall, breathing hard. What did I just do? Oh God, forgive me. But that night she could not sleep. The image of Daniel in the bathroom burned in her mind. She tossed, she turned, she prayed, but her body would not forget. The next day, she avoided Daniel as much as possible. She stayed in her room, cleaned slowly, and pretended to be busy. But her heart was restless. By the third day, her body and her loneliness had grown too strong. She told herself, "I will not do anything wrong. I will only talk to him. I will only ask for help." But deep down, she knew her heart was already planning something. So, Sister Veronica's new home was not filled with joy as she had hoped. Instead, a quiet fire had begun to burn inside her, a fire that would soon consume her and everything she held dear. The fire inside Sister Veronica grew each day. She tried to quench it with prayer, with housework, with sleep. But the more she fought, the more restless she became. Daniel noticed her strange behavior. He was respectful, but sometimes he wondered, why does she stare at me like that? Why does she smile and then quickly look away? He said nothing. He thought maybe she was just lonely. Maybe she missed his father. But Veronica's mind was no longer calm. One evening, the rain began to fall heavily. The sound of thunder rolled across the sky. Veronica stood at her window, watching the drops hit the glass. John was away again, busy with his endless business. The house felt too quiet, too cold. Daniel was in his room. She could hear him moving, maybe reading, maybe just lying down. Her heart began to beat faster. She whispered to herself, "No, I must not. He is my son now. This is evil." But another voice inside her whispered back, "You are alone. You are a woman. He is here. What harm will it cause if no one knows?" She closed her eyes and sighed deeply. Later that night, after she finished bathing, she called out, "Daniel, please come and help me." Daniel answered, "Yes, Ma," and walked into her room holding a small towel over his shoulder. She was seated on the bed, a wrapper tied loosely around her body. She pointed to the small bottle of lotion on the table. "Please, bring me that lotion." He picked it up and gave it to her. Then she turned her back to him. "Daniel, my shoulder is paining me. I cannot reach my back. Please help me rub it." Daniel froze. His face grew warm. "No, it is not right. You are my mother now." She turned to look at him, her eyes soft but firm. "Do not be afraid. I am not asking you to do anything bad. Just rub my back. I am in pain." He hesitated, then sighed and slowly sat down. He poured a little lotion on his hand and began to rub her back gently. Veronica closed her eyes. The warmth of his touch sent waves through her body. "Thank you, my son," she whispered. But inside her heart, her thoughts were no longer motherly. As Daniel rubbed her back, Veronica suddenly turned around, facing him. Their eyes met. He tried to look away, but her hand reached out and held his arm. "Daniel," she said softly, "do you know how much I have suffered? Do you know how many nights I have cried in this house, alone?" He swallowed hard. "Ma, please, don't say this." But she leaned closer, her eyes wet, her voice shaking. "I am a woman too. I have feelings too. Your father is never here. I cannot continue like this." Daniel stood quickly, his hands trembling. "No, this is wrong. You are my mother." She also stood and moved closer. Her wrapper loosened. "Forget that. I am just a woman and you are a man. Do not fight what your body is already feeling." He tried to step back, but she held him tightly. He whispered, "Please, I don't want this." But his young body betrayed him. The storm outside raged, thunder rolled, rain beat the windows. Sex. And inside that room, temptation won. That night, they crossed a line they could never return from. Afterwards, Daniel sat on the edge of the bed, his face buried in his hands. He was breathing fast, full of guilt. "This is wrong," he muttered. "Oh God, forgive me. This is wrong." Veronica touched his shoulder gently. "No one will ever know. It is our secret. Do not be afraid. What happened here will stay here." But Daniel could not look at her. He felt heavy, ashamed. He left the room quietly and locked himself inside his own. Veronica lay back on the bed, her eyes staring at the ceiling. She knew it was a sin, but instead of regret, she felt a strange satisfaction. For the first time in many years, she did not feel lonely. The next day, the house was filled with silence. Daniel avoided her eyes. He moved quickly, ate quietly, and stayed in his room. He felt trapped between shame and desire. Veronica pretended nothing had happened. She cooked as usual, cleaned as usual, and even smiled at him, but inside she was already planning when next it would happen again. For her, the forbidden spark had turned into fire. That night of thunder changed everything. What was once a home of peace became a house of secrets. And for Sister Veronica, one forbidden touch was only the beginning of her downfall. The moon was full that night. The compound was quiet. Only the sound of crickets filled the air. Sister Veronica sat alone in her room, turning the little pendant in her hand, the only thing she had left from her late husband. She wore it every night, as if the man she once loved could watch her from the other side. But her heart was not calm. It burned with something she could not explain. Her stepson, the boy she thought was just a stepson, had grown into a man, strong, tall, and with the smile of the husband she once knew. Whenever he walked by, she felt her heart beat faster, and shame filled her chest. "God forgive me," she whispered, pressing the pendant tightly. "This feeling is wrong, but I cannot stop it." The boy, his name was Daniel, knocked gently on her door. Daniel spoke softly and said, "Mama Vero, are you awake?" She jumped at the sound of his voice. Veronica said, "Daniel? What is it? It's late." Daniel said, I cannot sleep. The house feels empty without Father. I just wanted to sit with you." Her heart twisted. She opened the door. He stepped in, carrying a small lantern. His shadow stretched long against the wall. He looked at her, his eyes soft, innocent, but carrying a sadness that mirrored her own. They sat in silence for a while. Daniel said, Mama Vero, sometimes I feel like you are the only one who sees me. My uncles treat me like a burden. My friends, they mock me. But you always care. Her lips trembled. She wanted to say, I care because I am your mother, but instead, she only nodded. Veronica said quietly, You remind me of your father. The way you smile, the way you laugh. Sometimes when I look at you, I feel like he is here again. Daniel reached for her hand. Their fingers touched. The pendant on her chest shone in the lantern's glow. Daniel said, Then let me stay with you, just for tonight, so you will not feel alone. Her breath caught in her throat. Every voice inside her screamed. No, but her loneliness screamed louder. And so, in that silence, temptation crept in. The widow's sorrow became desire. The boy's sadness became fire. And that night, a line was crossed that could never be erased. The lantern burned low. The pendant swung lightly on her neck. Outside, the wind howled like spirits mourning in the trees. From that night, everything changed. They kept it a secret. Stolen touches, stolen glances, and midnight whispers. To the world, Sister Veronica was still the grieving widow. But in the dark, she was a woman hiding a forbidden fire. One morning, as she watched Daniel from across the yard, guilt struck her heart like a hammer. Veronica whispered, Lord, what have I done? She pressed the pendant against her chest, but this time it did not bring comfort. It felt heavy, like a chain around her neck. And deep inside, she knew this secret could not stay hidden forever. The fire of shame burns hotter than any flame, and it always leaves ashes behind. The nights had become heavy in that house. What began as whispers in the dark had turned into something no longer innocent. Sister Veronica's bond with Daniel had crossed lines that should never be crossed. At first, Daniel had moved with obedience. He was young, and she was older, stronger, and in control of the home. But with each passing night, he began to feel the weight of shame pressing on his chest. His prayers no longer felt clean. His eyes no longer carried peace. One evening, as the harmattan winds whistled through the broken corners of the windows, Daniel stood at her door but did not knock. He lingered. He trembled. And then he turned back to his room. The next morning, when Veronica called him softly into her chamber, he shook his head. I can't, he whispered, his voice barely audible. Veronica's eyes narrowed. What do you mean you can't? Daniel kept his gaze on the floor. It is wrong. I will not do it again. For a moment, silence filled the air like smoke. Then came a sharp laugh from Veronica's throat, cold and mocking. You think you can deny me? You, a boy I feed, clothe, and shelter? You dare to dictate to me? Daniel's lips trembled, but he stood his ground. I will not continue. Her hand twitched as though she would slap him, but she stopped herself. Instead, her lips curved into a strange smile, a smile that promised not forgiveness but punishment. That same day, fate delivered her an opportunity. Mr. John, her husband, returned home with unusual joy. He was a man who rarely laughed, but that night his voice filled the compound with songs. He had secured a new business contract, one he claimed would change their lives forever. My time has come, he declared, holding up a thick brown file as though it were a crown. This contract will open doors for me. The house buzzed with his happiness. He drank palm wine, clapped Daniel on the back, and even kissed Veronica's forehead. For once, there was peace under that roof. But peace was a fragile thing. Later that night, as Mr. John slipped into his drunken sleep, the file was left on the table. Veronica sat across from it, her eyes fixed on the folder. Slowly, a plan began to form in her mind. If Daniel thought he could walk away free, he was mistaken. He would pay for his defiance. Quietly, when all was still, she picked up the file. Her footsteps were soft as she crept to Daniel's room. He was asleep, his chest rising and falling with the rhythm of innocence. Without a sound, she slipped the file under his pillow. Then she left, her face set in triumph. Morning came with chaos. Mr. John woke to find the file missing. His shouts shook the walls of the house. Where is it? He roared, scattering papers, overturning stools. My contract, my future, who has touched it? Veronica, calm as ever, placed her hand on his arm. Search carefully, my husband. Maybe it is not lost, only misplaced. Daniel, hearing the noise, came running. His eyes widened at the sight of the destruction. What is happening, sir? He asked. Mr. Fragg, John turned on him like a lion spotting prey. My file is gone, the one I brought yesterday. Daniel shook his head. I did not see it. But then, as though guided by an unseen hand, Veronica's voice cut through the room. Why not check the boy's room? Children have curious hands. Her words were like oil on fire. They marched into Daniel's small chamber. Mr. John tore the pillow aside, and there it was, the brown file hidden neatly beneath. Silence fell. Daniel's mouth opened in shock, but no words came. Mr. John's face twisted with fury. "You!" he thundered, seizing the boy by the collar. "So you are the thief in my own house?" "No, sir," Daniel cried, his voice breaking. "I swear I don't know how it came there. I never touched it." But Mr. John was deaf to his cries. His trust had been broken, his pride wounded. He shook Daniel so hard the boy's teeth rattled. "All this time," John spat, "I fed you, clothed you, treated you like a son, only for you to stab me in the back." Daniel fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. "Please, sir, believe me, I am innocent. I don't know how it got there." But Veronica stood in the doorway, her face unreadable. She neither defended him nor condemned him outright. Her silence was louder than words, and in that silence, Mr. John found his answer. "You cannot stay here another day," he roared. Daniel's heart stopped. "Sir, please." "Out!" Mr. John bellowed. "Before I lay my hands on you, get out of my sight." He dragged Daniel to the door, flung him into the dirt, and hurled his small bag after him. Neighbors peeked from their windows, whispering at the spectacle. Daniel stumbled to his feet, choking on sobs. His eyes searched the crowd, but no one stepped forward. No one would stand against Mr. John. From behind the curtain, Veronica watched. Her lips curved into a faint smile. Her punishment was complete. Daniel walked away, his steps slow, his spirit broken. He muttered under his breath, "God sees. God knows. One day the truth will speak." And the house, which once carried the laughter of a boy, returned to silence. When betrayal is planted in the dark, it always grows into sorrow, and sometimes the ones we trust most are the ones who strike us deepest. The house was still echoing with Mr. John's rage when Daniel's few belongings were thrown out into the dust. A small bag burst open on the ground, scattering shirts, a pair of sandals, and some worn exercise books. Among the items, something small and silver caught the light. It rolled once on the red earth and lay still. Veronica's eyes fell upon it. Her breath stopped. A pendant. Not just any pendant. Her pendant. The same tiny trinket she had once pressed into the hand of her little boy years ago before tragedy had ripped him from her arms. A small charm of no value to the world, but of infinite value to her. She had kept its image in her heart all these years. A silent memory of what she lost. Her body trembled as she bent down to pick it up. Where did you get this?" she whispered, her voice sharp, almost broken. Daniel, still on his knees, wiped his tears with the back of his hand. He looked up at her, confused by the sudden change in her face. "My mother gave it to me," he said softly. Before the accident." Her hands shook so violently she nearly dropped it. "What accident?" Daniel swallowed hard, his voice heavy with a memory that still hurt. "We were traveling. There was fire. I never saw her again. Someone said she died. But before it all happened, she tied this pendant around my neck and told me never to lose it." Veronica staggered back. Her chest rose and fell in short, shallow breaths. Her eyes darted to his face, to the line of his jaw, to the shape of his nose. How had she not seen it before? The resemblance, the blood that spoke louder than denial. Her knees gave way and she collapsed to the ground, clutching the pendant to her chest. "My God," she choked. "Daniel, Daniel!" The boy stared at her, frightened and confused. "Why are you saying my name like that?" Veronica's lips trembled, her face pale as ash. "Because you are mine." "What do you mean?" She covered her face with her hands, weeping bitterly. "You are my son, my blood, my child I thought I lost forever." The crowd that had gathered outside gasped. Even Mr. John froze, the anger draining from his face, replaced by shock. Daniel's mouth fell open, his tears drying on his cheeks. "Your son?" "Yes." Her voice cracked like dry wood. "I gave you that pendant when you were small. I thought you died. All these years I carried your memory like a wound. And now..." She broke down, her voice drowning in sobs. "Now I see what I have done." The truth fell like a hammer upon the house. The boy she had lured into sin. The boy she had touched with forbidden hands. The boy she had punished in secret. Her son. The horror of it clawed at her soul. She reached for him, but Daniel recoiled, his face twisted in pain. "Stay away from me," he cried, his voice hoarse. Her hands froze in the air, trembling. The rejection pierced her deeper than any blade could. She wanted to scream, to run, to undo time itself. But there was no undoing. The past was carved in stone. Daniel picked up his scattered belongings with shaking hands. He did not look at her again. The boy she once claimed in secret as a lover now fled from her as though she were a monster. And in truth, was she not? When the dust of his footsteps settled and the compound grew quiet again, Veronica remained kneeling on the ground, the pendant clenched so tightly in her fist that her skin broke. That night, the house was heavy with silence. Mr. John sat in the outer room, staring at nothing. He did not speak to her, did not ask questions. Perhaps he did not know what words could even be spoken after such a revelation. The shame hung thick in the air, pressing on them both like a suffocating fog. Veronica sat alone in her chamber, a single oil lamp flickering beside her. Her face was pale, her eyes hollow. On the table before her lay a piece of paper, blank except for the trembling words she had begun to write. Her hand shook as she wrote, each word a confession, each sentence a wound cut deeper. She wrote of her sin. She wrote of the nights filled with whispers, of the lust that had blinded her, of the betrayal against both her husband and the boy. She confessed to the lies, to the planted file, to the wickedness of her own heart. Most of all, she wrote of the unbearable truth, that the boy was not just a ward under her roof, but her own flesh and blood. The child she had searched for in her dreams, the one she had mourned, the one she had once sworn she would die to protect. And instead, she had destroyed him. Tears stained the page, smearing the ink. Her sobs echoed softly against the walls. When the letter was done, she placed it neatly on the table. Her fingers lingered on it for a moment, then slid to the small bottle beside it. A bitter poison. She had kept it hidden for years, a precaution against misfortune. Tonight, it would serve another purpose. She lifted it to her lips. Her hand did not waver. The liquid burned her throat as it went down, sharp and final. She gasped once, her body convulsing, then collapsed against the table. The lamp flickered, casting shadows that danced on the walls like mocking spirits. The confession letter lay beside her still hand, ink and tears drying together. By morning, when Mr. John entered the room, he found her body cold, her lips darkened by poison. His eyes fell upon the letter, and as he read, the truth unraveled before him like a nightmare he could never wake from. He sank to his knees, clutching his head, a broken man. The house was quiet, but it was not peace that reigned, only the silence of ruin. And so the secret burned until it consumed everything. The sin that was hidden in darkness ended in death. What began as whispers became a fire, and that fire left nothing but ashes. If you've watched this story till the very end, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave your opinion in the comment section below. And guess what? A brand new video is coming in just a few days, so make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss it. Until then, we'll meet again in the next video.